said stuff without a scare.
This defense sucks. You are a professional team. Act like one, for God's sakes.
One of the greats. Buffone was a bear. Buffone was a bear. Buffone was a bear. He was a Chicago Bear. Now at the barroom for year 9, knowing winning is the bottom line. John Buffone continues the legacy. He's got Doug's pedigree.
If you look at this team and this quarterback and this coach, if it's not going to be now, when?
And John does it with 2 pros, Alyssa Barbieri and Danny Shimon. Buffone, 55 years old bear, covering all the team's affairs. Buffone, 55 years old bear, covering all the team's affairs.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Buffone 55. My name is Alyssa Barbieri from USA Today SMG's NFL Wires, including Bears Wire, and I'm filling in for John tonight. And with me tonight, as always, is Danny Shimon, the Barroom's lead analyst and founder of his YouTube channel, Shimon Draft Scout. Oh, no, he is not. It's Aldo.
He had to pop out because his internet was acting quirky. So I think he's ready now. There he is, Danny Shimon.
There he is. You can't escape this one, Danny. We need you in this one.
No. Unlike John, I'm not going to go hiding.
Exactly.
Well, Danny, how you doing after that game last night?
Well, it was a roller coaster of emotions for me. I mean, obviously they start off high. It was high anticipation. I think you guys may have felt the same way. That they take the opening drive, they go ahead and they take it down the field and they march it right down and like, all right, here we go, Ben Johnson era, and then the defense is playing lights out. And then even on that first drive, there's a couple of throws that Caleb missed. I'm like, all right, he's hyped up. We might have missed it, whatever. But as the game kept going on, it just got more bogged down. And I know we'll get into it here more, but it was just overall, it was just a disappointing loss. After the game, you felt kind of dejected. But then you break it. You come back and look at the all 22. You see some of the negatives. You see some of the coaching points in which I'm sure Ben Johnson and staff are going to harp on, today and tomorrow, tomorrow. And then you also see some of the positives. You see some of the plays by some of the defensive players, down 3 starters, they kept them pretty much in the game for 3 quarters. They rattled, JJ McCarthy in that first half. So those are the positives. Some throws that Caleb, he missed, but also he made some plays in terms of, arm talent, showing off that ability to throw the ball and kind of maneuver in the pocket, showing off his legs there and using that as an added weapon possibly there moving forward. So I know we'll dive into as we hit some of the all 22 here, but just a roller coaster of emotions. But again, it's only week 1. Week 1 in the NFL is always crazy, right? I always say, don't ever believe what happens in week 1, good or negative, So we'll see what happens here, how this team bounces back.
I mean, look at the Bears last year. It started out the year 1-0 and only won 4 more games after that. So, hey, if to lose, that means we win more this year. I am all for that. Aldo, what about you? How you feeling after that? I'm sure. I mean, it was not easy.
Alyssa. I'm frustrated. And I understand what Danny is saying, and I understand what Greg Gabriel said to me earlier this morning when I was ranting and raving, and Greg was about as cool as a cucumber. But it's just frustrating. I'm seeing the same things, and like Danny said, the high expectations for this season made this performance on Monday night, week 1, against a division rival so disappointing. They could not play 4 quarters. And yes, there you can nitpick some of the positives out of this, but the bottom line is results. And the results were that we were outclassed. We're going to talk about the coaching, and I'm going to give you a spoiler alert. I think we were outcoached. We're going to talk about Caleb Williams. Spoiler alert. I think he overthrew too many passes that should not be forgiven and have to be corrected. I can go on with the amount of mistakes. It's just frustrating. And we have been through this before when we tried to make excuses for our quarterbacks or our star players or our coaches and so forth. And I'm tired of doing that. I'm going to let it out. I'm not going to repress my anger anymore. I am going to let it out and let people know I am frustrated. And if I look like the clown doing it, if I look like the fool, and some people have been accusing me of that already today, then so be it. At least I'm getting it off my chest, and I feel like I'm not lying to myself by what I see. I'm not a football expert by any means, but what I see after 50, 60 years of watching professional football, this quarterback is way behind where he should be for the number 1 overall draft pick. I'm frustrated, and I apologize if people are tuning off, but I just am. I got to say it.
Assuming the role of John Buffone tonight is all
I think this
doing.
is that
Bringing
vein
the juice
popping out
here
of his
tonight.
neck. That's the only thing. Maybe under that beer. There you are. There you go. Get rid of that beer so we can see all those veins coming out.
Yeah, I think I'm passing out right now.
That's what this team has done to us, though. And like you said, you both said, you nailed it with the hype. I didn't get overly optimistic like I usually do. I mean, as evidenced by our picks last week, I was like, no, you can't go above 9-8. But still, going into that game, it's so frustrating. Again, that's the word like you're using, Aldo, to see that it was more of the same. You get the best coaching candidate in this coaching cycle. It's the same. He's an offensive guru supposed to help develop Caleb Williams. It's more of the same. It's just that frustrating element. And I know we're in week 1. Like we said before, a lot can happen. We still have 16 more games to go. And we're going to get to work in dissecting the Bears 27-24 loss to the Vikings in primetime last night. And here's how it's going to go. We're going to first break down Caleb Williams' performance. Then we're going to delve into our studs and duds from the loss. We're also going to discuss whether first-time head coach Ben Johnson was outcoached, and we already know how Aldo feels about that, but we're going to get into details. Then we are going to take a crack at officiating the officials from last night, because that did play a factor. And finally, beyond the obvious, what is it going to take for the Bears to win in Detroit? So let's go ahead and start with Caleb Williams' performance. And Aldo has a nice graphic to pull up for us that should have his numbers. There it is. He completed 21 of 35 passes with a 67% completion percentage, 210 passing yards, 1 touchdown. And he came alive on the ground last night with 6 rushes for 58 yards and his first rushing touchdown with the Bears in 2 years. So there you go. So, Aldo, quick thought before Danny dives into the details.
Overthrows. It's a problem. Let's not hide it anymore. This is unacceptable. I learned from the Cade McNown era that if you don't have an accurate quarterback, you don't have a quarterback. Because if he can't hit an open man, then you have got big effing problems. I'm not going to swear. I can't swear on Buffone 55, even though Doug would have been swearing up a storm. But that is the issue here. And when I look at these overthrows, there was a statistic, or I should say a graphic put up today by James Foster. He says that Caleb Williams leads NFL quarterbacks with 52 incompletions due to an overthrow, and that's based on the analytics company True Media, 17 more than Bo Nix and this is through last year, the 17 weeks last year and 1 week this year. This is unacceptable. 17 more overthrows than Bo Nix. I mean, I am hoping that Danny Shimon can explain what is going on here. He's a professional scout. He perhaps has an answer as to why this is happening still and what we can do to correct it.
Well, I'm not sure I have the answers, Aldo, but I will try to calm you down a little bit. All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, there are some just layups. I mean, he was missing in this game, and like I said, we'll dive into the tape a little bit later on here. But it was just the pass on 4th and 3 to DJ Moore. He's open. He's looking at him. He's got a clean pocket, and he just sails it. Same thing with Cole Kmet. The most egregious one, I think, was the one that late in the fourth quarter. DJ Moore spring right open down the sidelines, and he overthrows him by not just like a one or two. It's like sails it over his head. And to me, after the first 15 or 20 scripted plays where they rep in practice and they go off of script, that's where Caleb struggles. And, I look at his feet, and everything starts with his feet in terms of the quarterback. And I think his feet are a little antsy, right? His feet are supposed to be in position to when his eyes find a target, they can be in position to go and release the ball. And there's times his feet are just not following where his eyes are at, and I think that could be it. I see a lot of happy feet as well. I see a little bit of antsiness, like I said, a little anxiety. Some of it could be the fact that Brian Flores is known for this exotic blitzing scheme defense, but Flores kind of played a little trick on them because he didn't bring as much pressure in the first half. I think by my count was 1 or 2 blitzes at all in the first half, and I think that kind of let Caleb to kind of get into that little lull there. And then lo and behold, second half comes around, and I think he blitzed maybe 50% of the time or something like, insane in the second half of the time. And I think that kind of just threw Caleb off. And now he started to follow some of his bad habits, right? Holding onto the ball a little bit too long, trying to give it a ball real too quick. Again, feet are not set and ball is sailing. I mean, I was even able to complete, balls out to the flat. I mean, easy throws for him, right? And but then he made, other throws where there's a nice corner route to Rome Odunze where he drops it in between 2 defenders where only Rome can make the catch. Now Rome doesn't catch it. He should have caught that one, but that was a hell of a throw. There was another a third down throw where the pocket's kind of getting muddy and dirty in front of him. He does a nice, drops his arm angle and does a nice 12-13 route to Rome, who sits in the middle of the zone. And so he's making these throws. Obviously there's a couple other ones to DJ Moore and so on and so forth, but it's just the consistency is not there. So is it in his head? Is he being confused? I honestly think that his issue right now is just reading defenses pre-snap and post-snap. I think he's so enamored about staying in the pocket and being that pocket quarterback and making all these throws from the pocket, and he's so focused on getting the read of the defense. And I think he might be putting a little bit too much pressure on himself. Again, this is a complex system scheme that Ben Johnson's putting in, and I know he wasn't going to be fully drenched in it and have it, know it like the back of his hand. But some of the stuff that, you want to see here, you want to see these elementary throws like that they make him Pop Warner, right? Just an easy curl route, in route. Quarterbacks make it all the time. And I just, for whatever reason, the ball is sailing on him and he's not connecting. And what you see with Caleb is when he's on the run out of the pocket, that's when he's more accurate. I mean, that's when he looks like he's more free. If you want to call it, background kind of, playground kind of football, if you want to get where he ad libs and like that throw to Rome, that on a sideline, that there's only 2 or 3 quarterbacks in this league other than Caleb that can make that throw. So I mean, he shows you those wow moments, but just it's the consistency. So whether it's his feet not kind of staying in focus with his eyes, or he's overthinking it, or just an inability to kind of read and decipher defenses. I think that's where Ben Johnson and staff are going to have to kind of slow things down for him. And it doesn't help him. They had no rushing attack last night at all. And if you saw, JJ McCarthy was struggling. I could say he was rattled in that first half. And when did he settle down? What happened? The Vikings started running the football. The Vikings started gashing the Bears in the run game. And now they open up play action. And now that's stopped the second level of defender. So, Caleb doesn't have that. He didn't have that last night. He had no rushing attack. As a matter of fact, he led the team in rushing with 58 yards. And that's not a winning formula. I know Ben Johnson wants a consistent running attack, and we'll get into some of that stuff later on. But it just wasn't working offensively for whatever reason. And Caleb gets the brunt of the spotlight as he should on some of these missed throws. But also, like I said, there's a lot to go around there, and we'll get into it here as we get into the show.
And Danny, before you break down some of this tape, this is what Caleb said about the misses yesterday.
Yeah, we worked this play all week and was hitting it, and we kind of did it twice today and missed both in the same spot, missed it right in front of him, and it's frustrating because did everything perfect all the way up to that, and then just missed. And that happens. And so just being able to come back from that and keep punching, keep fighting. But those are big moments in the game. Both times I believe we were either high red zone or in the red zone, and just missed right in front of them. Just a bit outside, so or inside. So frustrating. Something that you practice, something that you hit throughout the whole week, and move the backer and whip it in there and just miss.
You take such great pride in his accuracy. Do you know why that didn't go the way it was supposed to go? Or?
I think I got to go back and watch it, honestly, but I think I set too far in front of it and tried to lead him and let him a little bit too far.
Were we on the air when you guys were saying that Caleb seems like he can be a little full of himself sometimes? I don't think we were on the air.
That was off-air conversation there, Aldo.
Off the record.
but I think the point that you guys made was really good, is that he really is nervous. He says that he's not nervous. He doesn't get nervous for games. I almost swore.
It shows.
Yes, it shows. It's pretty obvious. And like Danny said, his footwork is jittery. There's no comfort. And you can blame it on the poor offensive line play. You can blame it on running, the lack of a running game and so forth. And those are legitimate excuses. But again, this is a phenomenal talent. There's no doubt. He is phenomenal, a gifted athlete, and works hard at it. Hopefully works hard at it. But the mistakes now, 18 games into his pro season, and the mistakes going back to his time at USC, where he lost 5 of his last 6 games. I mean, this guy has been losing a lot of football games, or has been a part of a lot of football games, and usually the number one player who gets the blame or the credit is the quarterback. And I think that's where we're at with Caleb.
Yeah, another thing with him is he had a couple balls batted down, and I think he's not the tallest quarterback in the in the NFL, and I think he tries to kind of maybe lift that ball up to make sure it doesn't get batted down, and maybe the ball sails on him a little bit. Maybe he's a little more cognizant about the guys in front of him. Because there's a couple times, even last year, he throws the ball, he's so close to the line of scrimmage, or to the defender, and then he kind of he's flailing into the back of the blocker or even the defender as he's throwing the football. And a lot of times, those balls sail on him, or they could be knocked down. So maybe it's just being able to kind of maybe be better in terms of just kind of sliding into the pocket, left and right, and just finding a throwing lane, throwing window. Might be something that could help him. There kind of alleviate some of those. But those 2 throws you just showed right there, the one to Komet and the one to DJ Moore. Clean pocket, there was nothing really, in terms of harassment and in front of him.
Let me play the first one. The DJ miss. It's 17 seconds of silent B-roll, so you can talk over it.
Yeah, this is a big one. This is the 4th and 3 where everybody said maybe he should have gone for a field goal. But this is Ben Johnson. We know he's aggressive, and this play was designed to beat a zone, and he got the perfect defense for it. You see DJ Moore come clean here, clean pocket, nothing in front of him. All he has to do is just rip it right there to DJ Moore, and he just leads him a little too far, a little bit high, and DJ's out of his reach, and then it goes incomplete. So this was a huge play right here, because if you convert this, which looks like an easy pitch and catch, now you're probably first and goal or right outside the 10-yard line, and you're rocking and rolling here, already up 7-3. So this is something that was a key moment in the game that again helped the Vikings stay in the game and kind of stop the Bears' momentum that they had early on in the game. That's an easy throw, guys. Clean pocket. He does that 9 times out of 10, but just for whatever reason, this ball just sails on him. I try breaking his feet. I try looking at in terms of his head, and everything seems okay. And it doesn't seem like he was out of whack there in terms of mechanics. Again, clean pocket, nothing there in front of him that was dirty. Just rip it right there. And even on the broadcast, Troy Aikman said he missed it, wide open, easy throw. So those are things that NFL quarterbacks should be making, whether you're the first pick in the draft or the last pick in the draft. Those are easy, gimme throws that the play was called. That was a good zone beater play. They had the play there. Just throw it on DJ Moore. You convert first down, and next thing you know, the momentum keeps on. Maybe you score on a touchdown, and next thing the Vikings are now more playing on their heels. So huge moment in that game.
And then this is the one to Komet.
Yeah, similar concept. It's another zone beater. Komet kind of does a nice job curling in right there, wide open. He's got that the middle linebacker is kind of playing the crossing route there in front of him. So he's sitting there. He's not going anywhere. Just hit Cole Komet in his between the 8 and the 5, and he's done it before. So it's not like he hasn't done it before. So that's something like he can't. It's not like he can't physically make these throws. He can make these throws. He's making more difficult throws. 10 times more difficult throws. And it's just like these are more easy pitch and catch, kind of like layups, if you will. And just to miss these and sail these. Now, again, was it adrenaline? Was it just nervousness? Was it anxiety? For me, all game, even when that first drive, he was just too amped up, too anxious. Whether it was nervous, whether it was just the adrenaline from the crowd, I'm not sure. But then second half, I think when Flores started bringing the pressure, I think then we start seeing him start thinking and going back to some of those bad habits where he kind of retreats backwards and then now tries to kind of make things happen on his own. And that's when disaster started happening for the Bears offense.
Mm-hmm. I included this clip here in our text, the one that you asked for, the 3rd and 5 with Roma Dunze in the first quarter.
Yeah, so this is a 3rd and 5. So initially you take a look at this. All right, he check down, throws it to Manangai. Oh no, actually this is the different. This is the wow throw.
Oh,
right?
I'm sorry. Yes,
this is the throw where you're like, all right, you see the talent here. Like again, only 2 other quarterbacks, named Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes can make this throw other than Caleb Williams. Just running to his right there on a dead sprint and throws a BB right to Roma Dunze. A great play by Roma, but those are the things that was littered across his USC tape. And that's some of the tantalizing things when you watch Caleb Williams make difficult throws like that. You're like, okay, you can do that, but you can't throw that 4th and 3 easy, pitch and catch to DJ Moore, or that one to Cole Komet, another easier, much more easier in terms of difficulty type of throw. And that's what boggles fans, and I'm sure the coaching staff and a lot of the analysts' minds, like, what's going on here? Where's the disconnect here on some of these easy plays? And I'm sure Aldo, I think he's probably trying to rejoin here, but I think that's one of the things that drove probably Aldo crazy, because he sees that throw right on a dead run sprint, laser down the sideline, 15, 20 yard of a completion there. But yet that 4th and 3 easy, pitch and catch to DJ Moore, he can't complete, and he sails it. And then there's another one later on in the game, right before the 2-minute warning, where if he hits DJ, there's a busted coverage on Minnesota. DJ wasn't his first read; he was looking out to the flat, and then all of a sudden he caught DJ. But again, his feet are not where his eyes are at, right? And then so all of a sudden he throws, and that sails, good 7-8 yards over DJ's head. He catches that, he goes in and scores. It's an easy touchdown. They have well over 2 minutes to kick the ball back, and then hopefully try and get the ball back and try and come back and score again. So that was a huge play there as well. Easy completion that most all NFL quarterbacks should make. Again, whether you're the first pick in the draft or the last pick in the draft, those are easy, throws that you should make. And for whatever reason, Caleb is not making those on a consistent basis. And that's where Ben Johnson and his staff are going to have to sit there and find out what's going on.
And Danny, is this the play you requested?
Yeah, this is the 2nd and 6 first quarter. This is where he checks it down to Colin Malangai over the middle. The defense drops back. It's easy pitch and catch. You get rid of it. You get the first down. No problem. But if you go back, if we can rewind it real quick, although if you take that long look there, look at Rome. Rome does a great job of getting inside leverage on that corner. The safety bails on that in-cutting route. And so now Rome basically has a wide open post route. So you hold it 2 seconds later there, right there, bam, throw right there to Rome. That's a touchdown, easy throw to Roma Dunze down the field, one-on-one. And I all the time, if I have Rome, if that type of inside leverage going one-on-one with a defender and there's no safety there for help, I'm throwing it up there and letting Roma Dunze go up there and make a play. And that's why he just right away checks it down, whether it's ingrained in his head, hey, get rid of the ball, no sacks. If that's something that they're coaching to him coming into the game, that was something he was doing in the first half. You saw a lot of times that there were opportunities. There's another one to another corner route to DJ Moore that he was sailing wide open, no defender. He ends up not throwing that ball to him for whatever reason. So it's just inconsistencies where either his feet are not giving him the opportunity to be accurate with the ball down the field, or he's overthinking it, or he's got happy feet in the pocket. It's just everything's kind of now being put out there on the spotlight here for Caleb, and without a running game to support you, everything, all the pressure is falling on his shoulders. And yesterday he just wasn't able to go ahead and finish the job for the Bears.
And I know one of the things, Danny, that you were telling Alyssa and us, me, is that there was pass pressure on Caleb. And here's that first Hargrave sack. He had 2 in the fourth quarter. I only got one of them on video here, but and here it is.
Yeah.
Why don't you talk us through
Yeah,
it?
and I was real disappointed on the right side of the offensive line. Here you see Hargrave swim move, gets in between Drew Dahlman and Jonah Jackson. Jonah Jackson had a really, really tough game last night and gets in between them. And right away, he's in the face of Caleb. Here he had no option. I saw the tape down. I wanted to see if there was an outlet for him to get rid of the football. And by the time he looks up to a second read, Hargrave was already in his face and he sacks him. So that's on the offensive line, in my opinion. But again, we'll get into the studs and duds later on. But for me, Jonah Jackson had a rough night.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, this is part of what is new and improved for the team. And Drew Dahlman simply had a bad game. It was a D+, D- type of game. Alyssa, I don't know if, with your reporting at Bears Wire, what you heard about the interior of the offensive line, but other than Joe Thuney, those guys on the right, they were awful.
Yeah, especially considering what the Bears dedicated to land those guys this offseason. They have to be better. And I think as a whole, the entire offense does. But there were some bad outings last night, and that's the perfect segue into our studs and duds discussion. So that's how we're going to break down the rest of the game. Something I do after every game is do my studs and duds, which I filed last night or early morning, whatever time it was. I think it was probably early morning on my side. So first, let's start on the positive, because I think we need it after that segment there. So I want my apologies to Dio Odengbo, because I wasn't familiar with their game. He had some struggles during the preseason, was kind of invisible, but he really turned it up on Monday night and took advantage of a mismatch going up against Christian Darisal's backup. And Odengbo totaled 2 tackles, including 1 tackle for loss, a sack, 2 quarterback hits, and a pass breakup. He was just dominant all game. And, we're really hoping to see him step up and develop into that productive edge rusher opposite Montez Sweat. We will see. But thoughts on Odengbo?
Go ahead, Danny.
Yeah, for me, Odengbo, similar to me to you too, Alyssa. I was also tough on him in the preseason. Also, some of the training camp footage that I went and we actually saw Aldo and I there in person. But he made his presence felt. He was out there, consistently harassing the quarterback. Finished with 1 tackle for loss, 1 sack. Now he did get fooled, and he did bite on that RPO on that 3rd and 1 where J.J. McCarthy ran right by him and went down and scored. But I mean, and for the most part, I think Dio came out and kind of showed in terms of why the Bears kind of earmarked them for first couple of days of free agency and brought him in. So hopefully that just continues and get better. But it's a good first showing for Dio Odengbo for sure.
Yeah, the thing with Dio is that there was this expectation that he was entering a new phase of his personal growth. And that's what the Bears scouts and coaching staff detected about him, is that he was going to be a better pass rusher and take care of that edge than he did with Indianapolis. He was getting better each season, and he's at the age now where they banked on, they paid him all that money to continue his growth. And game one against the Minnesota Vikings, very, very promising. I'm really looking forward to his play the next several weeks.
And I know we touched on Jonah Jackson earlier. He was my first stud, the clear, obvious stud. I mean, the Bears' offensive line struggled as a whole, I think, outside of, Joe Thuney, and Darnell Wright had a solid game, I think, as well. But just watching the game, kept coming back to Jackson. He was a liability all night. And, again, going back to what the Bears invested in him, they traded a 6th-round pick this year, and they also signed him to that 1-year extension to keep him here longer and align him with the rest of the interior offensive line. He's going to have to perform better than that. He was just flat out bad in this game. The multiple penalties, he struggled from the point of attack. And when I was going through the Pro Football Focus grades, which is what I do on the day after games. He was, not that it's going to come as any surprise, but he was the lowest graded player for not just the offense, but the entire team at 31. And when you look at it, he had a 22.6 pass blocking grade and a 44.8 run blocking grade. And that's just not going to get it done. Thoughts on Jackson? Aldo, let's start with you.
I can't argue at all with what you're saying about him. You know, this was the most quizzical for me acquisition for the middle of the line, simply because he came off such a bad year with the Rams. And I know that he played very well under Ben Johnson, and I'm hoping that this is an aberration and that Ben's evaluation of him is correct, because we all know that Jonah Jackson is on this team because Ben Johnson vouched for him. There's just no way Ryan Poles would have spent that much money on Jonah Jackson. And so he has got to just pick it up. Now, Week 1 against the Brian Flores defense, where they're using a lot of disguises and they're playing with people's heads and so forth. That's a tough assignment, and in front of the Chicago Soldier Field faithful, it's a tough. So I expect Jonah to play better, but I'm still a little worried that this might have been another mistake in terms of Ryan Poles' free agent offensive lineman acquisitions.
Danny, do you share those concerns?
I'm not going to write him off completely, but I do. It was very, very concerning. I mean, he was horrible. I mean, whether it's pass blocking, we just saw that Javon Hargrave, Hargrave swim move beat not only Dahlman but also Jonah Jackson to get that sack on Caleb. But in the run game, and he was not physical at all. There was no, ability to move guys and off their spot. If anything, he was being bullied back into the backfield. And for me, it's the whole right side, even Darnell Wright, in terms of creating movement at the line of scrimmage as a run blocker. There was nothing there between Wright or Jonah Jackson. So I think that was a big disappointment for me. That the interior of the offensive line, where we thought was solidified. We went into this game worried about Braxton Jones. I'm not saying Braxton Jones had a great game, but we didn't hear Braxton Jones' name without the broadcast, right? And I know they chipped with a couple times with the running back and helped them with a tight end. But Braxton Jones and Joe Tooney were the bright spots, if you will, on that offensive line. It's the right side, and also if you want to add, Dahlman to that really disappointed me, especially in terms of the run blocking. Right, I think Dahlman was okay if you want in pass blocking overall, but just there was no ability to kind of maintain their blocks, get any sort of movement, create any sort of creases or holes for DeAndre Swift to get through. So I think that's what really disappointed me. And then I know Ben Johnson got disappointed because I know Ben Johnson wanted to help establish the running attack to help Caleb.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we have to remember, though, even though Ben Johnson, was 4-0 against Brian Flores when he was with the Lions, this is a very good Vikings defense, too. So, I mean, it wasn't a gimme team they were playing by any means. But moving on, so
real quick, but with the addition of Javon Hargrave and Jonathan Allen, I think that's going to be even better Vikings defense this year than what it was the last couple of years. Because as you notice, we said earlier, Brian Flores didn't blitz the first half because he was kind of banking on his front fours and his improved front four to get after the quarterback. It's when they couldn't really generate that pressure, and then he started bringing the blitzes, and now it made those guys even more formidable. So Hargrave and I think Hargrave had 2 sacks, both the sacks versus the Bears last night. I think him and Jonathan Allen are going to make that Vikings defense even more formidable. Sorry.
Absolutely. No, perfect. That's perfect segue. So you're talking about the difference between what they were doing in the first and second half. Same with the Bears offense, especially on that first drive. I kind of did something funny where I had one of my studs was the offense on that first drive, and the dud was just like for the remainder of the game, because we saw the Bears do something that they hadn't done all of last year, which is score a touchdown on the first possession. It really looked like an inspired start. I saw celebrating. I didn't want to get too high, but I was like, this is a good, solid start. And they drove 61 yards on 10-play drive, and Caleb Williams got his first rushing touchdown. He started that on that drive 6 of 6 and eventually completed his first 10 passes. So that was encouraging. But then, as we all know, it was just a nosedive after that. The offense struggled, even though there were opportunities, and something that we talked about even heading into the season where the Bears offense struggled were those pre-snap penalties. It was something dating back to training camp. We saw it in preseason, and it reared its ugly head here. When you look at what the offense did that first drive, they only scored 10 points the rest of the game, including that last touchdown that happened in the final minute. And Caleb, like we talked about, he was overthrowing guys, missing wide open guys. That was an issue. The lack of a run game, which is what we also discussed in that offensive line. We know that Ben Johnson has, preached patience when it comes to this offense, which we do have to keep in mind. But it wasn't an encouraging start. So let's just kind of like wrap it up on thoughts on the overall offense. Danny, let's start with you.
Yeah, like you called it, Alyssa. First drive, those are first 15 or 20 scripted plays. Obviously they've repped them through the week. They came out, they're hitting on those. They drove right down the football field, and like I said, Caleb capped it off with that rushing touchdown. But then once they got off those scripted plays, they went off script, if you will. That's where we saw again the pre-snap penalties, right? The false starts and all that stuff. Nothing more infuriating than when you gain on first down, you gain a 5-yard run by DeAndre Swift, and then the next play it's a false start, you give it right back again. So it's like that's where I think Ben Johnson was talking today, where they were consistently in second and long, and then eventually third and long, and that became made it for the offense harder for the offense to get completions, continue drives, get first down. So yeah, it was just disheveled, right? It just wasn't coherent. I said it earlier last night. I said first drive great, last drive great. Other than that, it was all out of rhythm, out of sync. We'll get into the play calling a little bit later. That's some of the stuff there kind of confused me there as well. But yeah, it wasn't a unit that was cohesive. That wasn't a unit that seemed like they were in tune with each other, from the play calling to the blocking to execution. And obviously I think those pre-snap penalties were pissing off me, Aldo, you, Ben Johnson, everybody. And I think he's tired of it as well. So we'll see how they can go ahead and get those done. Guys, we haven't touched on the fact that they had 12 penalties for 127 yards in this football game. That is insane. It's hard to win a football game when you keep shooting yourself in the foot like that.
Yep.
And the number of times they show Ben Johnson on the sideline, the number of memes, just already week one. But yeah, Aldo, go for it.
No, I was going to say that, in camp, this is what we heard from camp, that there were these penalties going on, that there was this inaccuracy problem with Caleb, that there was, everything that we saw on Monday Night Football happened during the preseason. And so this team is not, we haven't gotten to predictions yet, but this team is not going to be able to turn around in 5-6 days on the road against Detroit. I think it's going to take a little more. Now, maybe, hopefully, I'll be proven wrong. Ben Johnson is a very smart, and I have a lot of confidence in him as a coach. But what I saw Monday night was disturbing, in that these were a lot of the same mistakes, a lot of the same players making some mistakes, and some of the new additions making mistakes. One of the things I do want to say in terms of a stud, so to speak, in Ben Johnson's game plan is that he had Caleb running more. And I think that when you have a young quarterback who has the athletic ability to pick up yards with his legs, you should rely on that. As a head coach, you should rely on that as much as possible, because that's your biggest fail-safe. Call more designed runs for Caleb. It's going, particularly if your running backs are running up against a wall. Design stuff for him to take advantage of the very deceptive way that he runs with the football, and deceptively good. I don't think a lot of people have given him credit for what he does with the run game. So I'm hoping that Ben Johnson is going to exploit that with his offensive scheme in the coming weeks while Caleb is settling down. And I'm also hoping that Caleb is – I lost my train of thought there. But there's opportunities there for this offense to build on the little bit of success that we saw and turn things around. But I have no expectations that it's going to be a quick turnaround.
Yeah, and it doesn't help that they're playing the Lions on the road in Detroit against a Lions team that just they need a win. They're going to be angry. The Bears are going to be on the receiving end of that. But we will get to that at the end of the show when we make our predictions. But one of the other guys that I had on defense as one of my studs that I wanted to recognize was Noah Sewell, just because I think when you look at just overall, the Bears defense was playing without three of their starters in this game. And when I saw especially that Jalen Johnson and Kyler Gordon were out, I was like, uh-oh, this might be a potential shootout, and the opposite happened. But with TJ Edwards sideline with a hamstring injury, Noah still really stepped up in that starting role alongside Tremaine Edmonds. And we had heard, and you guys saw him in person at training camp. He impressed throughout the summer, and we saw glimpses of that in preseason and in the preseason. And I think he really looked the part there. He led the team in tackles. He was all over the field. He struggled in coverage a little bit, but it's going to happen with him. But I think that he was more than a respectable replacement for Edwards. And I think it's important to have that depth. At any position, but it feels like the Bears really had that solid depth at linebacker. But any thoughts on Sewell?
Yeah, I think Sewell had a solid game. He brings that level of physicality, especially on his run defense. And the unfortunate part is for the young kid is he'll be remembered for being the guy that was trying to chase down Aaron Jones on that wheel route out of the backfield. And that's not fair because coverage is not his strong suit. Right, his strong suit is playing at the line of scrimmage. And once you get a healthy linebacker, if you go into base, I think he's going to be your strong side linebacker, taking over that position that Jack Sanborn left when he went to Dallas. So yeah, I think that's a nice little young linebacker there. Obviously, Hippolyte's a rookie and he's still developing. We still have Amon on IR. So I think the linebacking depth seems to be in okay shape here. But yeah, I think Noah led the team in 9 tackles. You had that almost. I know the challenge thing. We'll get into coaching, but I thought that was a fumble, but whatever. But but again, the whereabouts to come in and punch that ball out with the Hawkins. So I think that's something that you want to see in these young defenders to kind of just keep going for that football.
And Alyssa, what I was most impressed with Sewell's game is just how quick and fast he was from that linebacker position. When I was looking for clips for tonight's show, I was just amazed at how quickly he would get to the line of scrimmage to meet blockers or to meet the ball carrier and so forth. I wasn't quite aware that he was as quick. And Ryan Poles had told Greg Gabriel prior to this draft that they wanted more speedy linebackers. I wasn't really aware that they already had one in the roster. I mean, I think, and Danny, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Sewell is a lot quicker than TJ Edwards. Now, TJ Edwards is a better football player. He's got the wisdom. He's got, all of the tools to make good plays and so forth. But athletically, right now, Sewell way over TJ Edwards in my eyes. Thank you, Keith, for the donation.
Thanks, Keith. Yeah, I don't remember the time that Sewell had coming out of Oregon, but I know he's a physical, downhill thumper, and you saw that when he keys and he reads the run, he fills with physicality. Remember that preseason game against the Dolphins where he stopped that our 4th and goal at the 1 yard line. That's his strength. That's his game though. So I think that's definitely a positive there for Noah Sewell, and he brings that level of physicality. In terms of TJ Edwards, I think what he has mentally in terms of his ability to key and diagnose pre-snap and also then just go when the ball is snapped. I think that's where obviously the veteran and being in the league for so long, I think that's where he ups Noah Sewell, but he might not have the athletic ability of Noah Sewell, but just the whereabouts and the knowledge of the game. I think that's where TJ Edwards stands for me above both Sewell and Tremaine Edmonds.
And if Edwards misses, any additional time, because it is a short turnaround with the Lions on deck on Sunday, it'll be good to know that the Bears have a solid backup there in Sewell. But guys, it wouldn't be a Buffone 55 show if we're not talking about special teams. So my final done, which
for me, to be honest with you.
I don't even have to say it, but it's Cairo Santos, who, look, I will forever be grateful to him for ending that kicker curse, after Robbie Gould left, right? And it was just the circus of kickers that they brought in at one point under Matt Nagy. So I'm grateful for him for ending that. But I also think that it's fair to wonder if the Cairo Santos experience has run its course here. Because we're now in a league where you have kickers booting from 60 yards. That's normal. That's to be expected. And we know that Santos struggles beyond 50. You know, his leg strength isn't the best. He's going to be solid inside 50 and inside 45 yards, but he's not going to be kicking those long ones, which would be a layup for most kickers. And you look at the game, he missed that 50-yard field goal there, which, you know, we're going to talk about the officiating, but that drive as a whole was just a mess. But that's a kick that he should have made. It ended up being the difference, but you can't really say that for sure because of how the game unfolded. And then, you know, after the game, Ben Johnson, you know, said that on that final kickoff when the Bears with 2:02 left on the clock, that Santos was supposed to kick the ball out of the back of the end zone. That didn't happen, and that ended up being an issue for the Bears. But I turn to you guys. Do the Bears officially have a kicker problem?
You want to go first? Because I have a lot to say. I think the Bears have a special teams coordinator problem, to be honest with you. Richard Hightower was brought back from last year's staff. And again, this is a guy, the unit, besides Cairo Santos missing that 50-yard field goal, it's the another block punt. We have how many block kicks we had last year? We had a block punt already in game one, right? In terms of that, and the coverage units were crap all night long. The Vikings returner was getting good returns off of the Bears, and then also, we talked about the failed kick the ball out of the end zone. This is where the special teams coordinator goes to the head coach and say, listen, I don't think Cairo can kick the ball out of the end zone. Let's kick it out of bounds. Even if we kick it out of the end zone, if you kick it out of bounds, it's only comes out to the 40. So it's really you only lose 5 yards. So let's do that. And today, hindsight, Ben Johnson did admit that he should have. He took it up on himself, so that he should have had them kick it out of bounds. But that's one of the things where a special teams coordinator comes to him and says, "Hey, listen, coach, I think we should kick out of bounds," because part of these new rules and everything. Hightower was one of the special teams coordinators that was in on these meetings and helped design these new kickoff rules. So I think that's where it's something that I think he failed head coach there. Again, the block kicks, and I know that Caleb's getting some of the heat for the missed 50-yard field goal, but your NFL kickers nowadays. If you're a 50 or 51, you got to be able to make those kicks now, right? And I know Santos has never had a really strong, big leg, but it's just even the preseason. I think he missed a couple extra points. It's been a rocky start to his season so far. So I think that's something where I unlike Alyssa, I do not want to get on the kicker carousel because it's not pretty. You get motion sickness. You start throwing up.
I don't want to get on the kicker carousel either, Danny.
So let's
already done that.
A little bit longer time here. Let's see what he can do. But yeah, Cairo as a professional kicker, 50 and you have to make those, bud. Especially someone veteran like you, team captain. Have you ever seen a kicker as a team captain? I think the first time I've ever seen a kicker being named a team captain. But anyway, I digress. But yeah, to me, Richard Hightower, you're on my side, and the special teams unit all night for me was poor play.
I know Aldo has thoughts on Hightower.
Yeah, and since Danny basically said just about everything that I was going to say, I won't belabor it. In fact, I'll just change one of my duds, and one of my duds is all of the fans that are criticizing Caleb Williams because he painted his nails. Listen, let the guy do whatever he wants from a fashion standpoint, and what he did with his nails yesterday was to promote suicide prevention, a hotline for people in need of counseling because they're considering suicide. For anyone who is a Bears fan and is unaware that that's what he was doing, I am telling you now that is what he was doing, and you should be applauding what he did as opposed to condemning him. I just banned somebody from the Barroom Network because he thought that was a big deal and needed to be said. Screw that. Anybody that feels that way about Caleb Williams and what he's trying to do in helping society, or even if he wants to wear a dress to the game, I don't care. I am only going to be critical of his play. I am not going to be critical of his character and what he does off the field. Next subject.
Although you asked me why he was inaccurate, I think we just found out this reason. It must have been the fingernails. That must have been why he was inaccurate.
That's right.
It makes no sense. Like, of all the things that we've talked about, some of the problems that with the Bears showed last night, like the fingernails, I was like, really? Like, that's what you noticed? That's what really rubbed you the wrong way? It wasn't the sailing throws over the receivers, whatever. again, it's just I digress, but it doesn't bode well for whoever made that comment. But are we doing our duds and studs or?
I do want to give Howie some credit here because this is a very funny line. He had suicidal thoughts after the game.
I saw that someone was like, it was fitting that he had the nails after that game.
Yes.
Howie, trust me, my friend, it'll get better. I'm not saying when, but it'll get better.
Let's hope real soon, please.
Are we doing our duds and studs, or are you gonna go give a stud?
Does anyone have any other studs they'd like to add to the mix? Because I think we need some positivity.
I do have one. Danny, let me go first. Real quick. Cole Kmet, I thought, had a fabulous game. It went unnoticed because most of the good stuff that he did was blocking, and he was a needed source to help Braxton Jones on that left side. Some of the clips that I saw, he was sensational in blocking, and he also had the catch of the game over the middle. A lot of people have forgotten that. That was a sensational catch. When the broadcasters thought it was incomplete, everybody thought it was incomplete, but it was clearly a great one-handed catch they brought into his belly and covered it up. It was sensational. He's one of my studs, and I think he deserves applause.
I agree. That catch was phenomenal. And yes, his blocking was paramount. There's even one where he was one-on-one against Greenlaw, Grenard, sorry, their edge rusher. So he has one-on-one blocking there too. So kudos to Cole Kmet in his game. My star was Tano Passanio. The defensive end was brought up from the practice squad the day of the game, activated, and he brought a physical presence on that second defensive line. He had a sack and a tackle for loss. Obviously, he's a veteran that's been with Dennis Allen in New Orleans. He's been on the Chiefs as well. He's not a guy that's gonna give you double-digit sacks, but I mean, he brought some physicality. He brought some pressure there off the edge, and I think he was one of the main sources of pressure there early on that got into JJ McCarthy's grill and also then got into his head. So I think Tano Passanio had a pretty solid game, especially considering that he was just activated from the practice squad prior to the game. So Aldo, do you have a dud or should I go with my dud?
Go with your dud, bro.
My dud, obviously, we already talked about the right side of the offensive line, so we'll move on to that. But for me, play calling. And I don't want to get into the whole criticizing Ben Johnson for his play calling. I just want to know, all right, you had two running backs that are active on your game day roster, right? And Kyle Monangai, the 7th round pick, had one catch for 11 yards and no rushing attempts. DJ Moore, our receiver, had more rushing attempts. And not just, hey, let's get cute kind of rushing attempts, like literally legit, hand them off and run up in the middle of the offensive line rushing attempts. So if Kyle Monangai is healthy, which I assume he was being active, if he wasn't, that's a whole nother question, because why do you have a running back that's unhealthy? What if DeAndre Swift went down with an injury? What would you have done then? So if Kyle Monangai is healthy, why doesn't he get a carry or two? Are you telling me that the stage is too big for him? Are you worried about that? You said you trusted him, Ben Johnson, that you would trust him this fall. I'm not sure why Kyle Monangai doesn't get an opportunity to kind of maybe pound between the tackles and get some yards there. And you rather use DJ Moore, a receiver, as a running back. And if he wasn't healthy, he shouldn't have been active, and he should have brought up Britton Brown from the practice squad. So there. And then I know he answered it today, but my question was, where were the tight ends? We talked about Cole Kmet there. Cole Sullivan had 2 catches. Combined between those two, there was 3 catches. Now he did mention today that the game plan was to utilize them in pass pro, in the run game, to help the offensive line. But still, you can't take a kid number 10 overall and tell me that you can't use him at all in the game plan, because he was, he's going to be used as a blocker or, in the passing game and run game. That's a 10th overall pick in Colson Loveland. You got to use him. Cole Kmet is a weapon, as we saw later on in that fourth quarter. You got to use him. And then for me, it's like, all right, Rome had 6 targets, 6 receptions, not many yards. Luther Burden, other than that kickoff return before the halftime, there wasn't really much there for Luther Burden. Why didn't we get him involved a little bit in space and some of the quick hitters, right? And to my next point, you have a aggressive, especially in the second half, blitzing defense. The best way to beat a defense is to hit them with the screenplay here and there. There were no screenplays at all. And someone in the chat also mentioned earlier, I went through the tape again, and maybe I missed one. If I missed one, I do apologize. there were no rollout. There were no design rollouts to get Caleb away from some of that pressure, get him out where he's more comfortable on the flat, and make it a half throw for him, and get him on the run and get some of those easy first downs. I saw none of that as well. So, again, I'm not going to sit here and criticize Ben Johnson's play calling and all that stuff, but I'm like, some of the things that just didn't make sense. Now, his first coaching game, and we'll get into it a little bit later on, but just it was the whole offense, from the play calling to the execution to the players on the field, just was not in sync.
Yeah, I do want to just retort to one of your duds, and that is, some of these players weren't used, like Luther Burden and so forth, just simply because the Bears offense was getting off the field so quickly. In the third quarter, 3 plays and out to start the second half. And then 5 plays, 23 yards gain. And then all of a sudden now it's the fourth quarter. They only had 2 possessions in the third quarter. And so they had a punt after 3 plays, 5 plays in a punt. And so those series there really hurt what potentially Ben was going to do with some of these players. And so, it's a long season. He said during the press conference, that the tight ends were being used for blocking purposes, and that this is, every game is its own scheme and so forth. And so I'm expecting Burden and Colston, Loveland, and some of these newer acquisitions to have more participation in the coming weeks.
Yeah, I understand your point, and I get that part. But it's like, if you have an aggressive defense, has screen here and there. I'm not saying just kill them with bubble screen.
Agree with the screens.
Screen
Absolutely.
here and there. Maybe get the ball Burden in the open field. Maybe to your running back, something like that. And I think a couple of plays we saw where Caleb got the ball in the flat to DeAndre Swift was successful. He was able to make a guy miss and get a first down. Especially when, like you said, all the 3-play drive for when you want to get a drive going and just continue the possession of the football, some of those plays may help. But the other thing, what really checked me was no rollouts, no design rollouts. Why not? Let's get Caleb away from the pressure. Let's get him some easy throws.
And Ben did say that some of his play calling he was not happy with. This is what he said earlier today.
I didn't think I called a particularly great game. I could have adjusted a little bit better to the lack of pressure that Flo was giving us. And so I can do a better job there. And then at the end of the game, felt like we could kick it out of the back. We weren't able to get that done. In hindsight, I should have kicked it out of bounds.
Accountability.
How about
Wow. That is crazy. Accountability from a coach.
Oh, yeah. And that was very impressive. I do give him credit for that. That's nothing we would have seen ever from Matt Eberflus, right?
Oh.
But it's he was out there and said, it was I made a mistake. And even on the challenge, although I don't know if you have the clip, where he said that they told him upstairs, don't challenge. But he got more into the emotion because it kind of saw it. They thought the knee didn't hit the ground. So he kind of went on his emotion. And he says, that's my bad. I won't do that again. I'll listen to the people upstairs. So he was told, don't challenge.
This is it. Yeah, this is it.
Yeah, on the challenge, on the Hawkinson play, it looked like Noah Sewell dislodged the ball. What did you see on that to throw the flag?
Yeah, I thought I saw knees up, and so that's on me. I got to do a better job listening to the guys up top. I get influenced a little bit for the first time with the people around me, and I got to stay true to the process.
Does anybody understand the rule there? Why is he saying knees up? Nobody touched him. He punched the ball out. That should be a fumble. I don't understand that whole thing.
I think he thought from his angle he didn't see the knees hit the ground.
But that doesn't matter.
Well,
He wasn't touched down.
Right. So that's why I think you and I are on the same page, Ola, because I saw that the first touch was the fist hitting the ball, right?
Right.
But the ESPN guy, which I think might be incorrect on a cast, said that because he was down, doesn't matter if he hit the ball or not, he's down. I'm like, no. I don't think as long as you don't touch, he goes, if you touch him with like a fingernail, but it didn't look like from my angle that he hit Hawkinson. He hit strictly on the ball came out.
Yes.
That's why I thought it was a fumble.
Alyssa, we got to get to the bottom of this. Let's do some investigative reporting. I think that guy who was on the broadcast and said that, I think he's a Vikings fan.
Or a Packers fan.
Yeah, right.
Well, we got plenty more to come. Was Ben Johnson outsmarted in his first game as a head coach? Did the officials help the Bears blow the game? And what will it take to beat Detroit? on Sunday. All of that is next, but first, take a look at what the Bar Room is offering Bears fans.
We got some shows to get to know, butterflies and fans, we understand. And for our squad, we bleed orange and blue. We analyze and criticize. If you're surprised, look in our eyes, and you'll realize that we're just like you. So if you wanna join our journey, follow the network and you will see the passion of the fans is what we do. So join the Ballroom Network today and support our team in any way, 'cause we bleed orange and
We're back here on Buffone 55. John has the night off, but we're here to keep the Bears conversation going. Immediately after Monday night's game, many people pointed out some errors by the Bears coaching staff. And Danny and Aldo talked about Richard Hightower during our dud segment. And now here is NFL Network analyst Brian Baldinger pointing the finger more directly at Coach Ben Johnson.
Let's review the end of the game clock management by Chicago. With 2:05 to go, down 27-17, Caleb Williams throws this 1-yard touchdown pass to Roma Dunze. When he caught that, there was 2:02 left. Now, this is where the clock management error by Chicago comes in. Cairo Santos is going to kick off. He's going to kick it 7 yards deep into the end zone, and Tyson Chandler is going to bring it out. Why? Because they want that clock to go under 2 minutes. So Chicago can't get a stop at the 2-minute warning. They should have just kicked the ball out of bounds. Who cares about whether you get the ball at the 40 or the 25 to start? The important thing is the 2 seconds, because the Bears only had 1 timeout left. So when Minnesota got the ball, they had 1:55 to go, and Chicago had 1 timeout left. 1 timeout left. That was the important thing. So when Minnesota runs it here and Jordan Mason gets 3 yards and Kevin Byard tackles him, the Bears use their last timeout. They could have used it at 2:02 and still had a timeout left, run 40 seconds more, and gotten the ball back, potentially. That was clock management error.
And Peyton Manning on his Manning cast also implored Ben Johnson to kick a field goal before the 2-minute warning and then try for an onside kick. So, Danny, what did you think of Johnson's decision at the end of the game there?
Yeah, I think Ben Johnson, we saw the clip earlier, he's already admitted that was a mistake, that he should have had Cairo kick the ball out of bounds. My thing is, this is where your special teams coordinator, Richard Hightower, should come in and say, hey, coach, we need to kick this ball out of bounds. I'm not sure if Cairo can kick it out of the end zone. So I agree with that. I'm not sure about Peyton Manning's suggestion about kicking a field goal and then going for an onside. I mean, the hardest part is getting the touchdown. You're already there. Score a touchdown, and then if you want to go for the onside from there, you do it there. But the right play would have been to, if you're not sure Cairo can get out of bounds, kick it out of the end zone. Kick it out of bounds, like Baldy said. Whether it's a 35 or 40, don't make a difference, because they're just going to run the football there. You probably would have to make a stop on 3rd down, is my guess. But again, depending on what Minnesota decided to do. But I think Ben Johnson said today that they were estimating that if that happened, that they probably got the ball back within 56 seconds, something like that, which is plenty of time to hopefully get down the field and get into a field goal range. So that was the error there, in which I would have had to kick it out of bounds.
And Aldo, where do you stand?
Yeah, I think this was clearly a mistake by Ben Johnson. But like Danny is saying, I think this was more Hightower. Hightower is the special teams coordinator. He has to have this solution like on the tip of his tongue and run over to the head coach and tell him the smartest play is to kick it out of bounds. credit to Ben Johnson. I think he was covering up for his special teams coordinator. And I think what we saw last night in his post-game press conference was frustration on his face, not only with the play of some of his players, but also of some of his coaching staff. And so I appreciate the fact that first, Ben Johnson is sticking up for his coaching staff and coordinators and taking the bullet for them. But at the same time, I don't appreciate that Richard Hightower is not doing his job at a high enough level to help us win games. There's a growing concern, a growing trend that he might be a part of the problem and not part of the solution.
And that's definitely concerning because he was the only coordinator that Ben Johnson opted to bring back because he trusted his experience as a special teams coordinator to help him in situations like this, and he let him down. I do think, Aldo, like you're saying, I think maybe Ben was covering for Hightower, but again, we'll see how, if the Bears are in situations like this again the rest of the season, how does this pan out?
Yep.
And then how many kicks the Bears had blocked the last 2 years? My count is 4. 3 for sure, possibly 4. And that falls on the special teams coordinator. You got to get rid of those blocked kicks. Again, last night, a blocked punt.
Yep. And this team has made an effort, a concerted effort to get players on this roster who are good at special teams. It's not like, Hightower is picking up the remains of a shoddy roster. These were targeted players to join the special teams, and so I don't think, and again, I'm not a know-it-all here. I may sound like one from time to time, but I don't think that Hightower is upset with the quality of the players in that team. I think that what's going on here is that when it comes down to making quick decisions, he's not doing a good job.
Absolutely. And kind of looking ahead also to the officials, we're going to shift our focus here. If looking at social media, anyone watching that game, it was clear that there were some questionable calls there. And while officiating was certainly a factor here for a Bears team that had 12 penalties for 127 yards, good teams will find ways to overcome that, yes. But there were some questionable calls that had a real big impact on the game, whether that was the phantom pass interference call on Tyreek Stevenson that then led to that second fourth quarter touchdown for the Vikings. But I think that we can all agree the most egregious, and this is when I saw it the most on Twitter, was when Darnell Wright was called for that holding on defensive lineman Jalen Redmond. It backed Chicago up 10 yards. They had there's an incompletion thrown, and then there was another penalty, and it just killed the drive. That was also when Cairo Santos missed his 50-yard field goal. The Vikings then went on to score 3 consecutive touchdowns to mount the comeback. So I don't like blaming the officials, and I'm not going to blame the officials for a loss because this wasn't something that came down to the last play of the game, right? It wasn't decided by this. There was a lot more other factors that went into this loss, but it was an awful look, coupled with that Stevenson PI call. Aldo, where do you stand with the officiating in this one?
Well, first of all, I want to say Alyssa's too modest to say that you should go over to bearswire.com and look at the article she wrote about the officials. And she collected some great thoughts from people on social media complaining about the officiating. It was very, very well done, Alyssa. I was tempted to steal a lot of your material for our show, but I figured, okay, next time I will. But you know what? Just go over to bearswire.com and you'll find it there on the front page. Great job, Alyssa. And I got to get on my high horse just one more time. I swear I won't do it anymore. I swear I won't do it anymore. But it just drives me absolutely nuts that the fans at home are seeing that the call on the field is wrong. There is plenty of time for the NFL officials to correct these bad calls. Why should we, millions of people watching on TV or whatever device, know that that was a bad call and the game is allowed to go on? It could quickly be reversed. No flag on Darnell Wright. It was a bad call. Pick up the flag. Next down. Let's get going. This has to be corrected. This is lunacy that we are allowed to be better officials because of the replays that we're getting at home than the guys being paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to make the calls on the field. That's the last time for another week or so that I will complain about NFL officiating.
Well, I really hope that the officials don't give us anything to complain about on Sunday, but
Ugh.
yeah, that was really well said. And I would like to say all of the money that these officials are getting, can we just like divvy it up between everybody and everyone gets like $100 or something just for our trouble here? But
Yes.
thoughts on the officiating?
Yeah, for a second, I thought all those going to go on as high horse in terms of these officials should be full-time employees. That's
another one. Yeah,
thing I've heard so many times. But when I agree with you, by the way, 100% on that. But yeah, I mean, it's you're right, Alyssa. The officials weren't the reason the Bears lost this game. We have gone over a litany of the reasons why, some of the reasons why the Bears lost this game. But that penalty, that holding, that non-holding penalty on Darnell Wright. I mean, that backed him up 10 yards, and then the next play, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, was the grounding penalty on Caleb Williams that backed him another 10 yards, and that's what made the kick farther out for Cairo that he missed. So, and then obviously that PI that I do not think was a PI on Tyreek Stevenson extended that drive, or that Minnesota drive that then eventually led to a touchdown. So, while they're not the reason the Bears lost, the officials, in my opinion, played a little bit of a hand there in contributing to some of the bad luck the Bears ended up having last night. So yeah, and it's a national televised game. It's a bad look for the NFL. It's typically, for these, big high profile games, you get the better officiating crew, but, it doesn't look like we got those last night.
Nope, officiating is a real issue, but again, hopefully that is a non-factor on Sunday when the Bears head to Detroit to face the Lions. So guys, we got a game and it's coming quick this short week. So last week, John, Danny, and I all picked the Bears to beat the Vikings in a close game. Aldo in another barroom show picked the Bears to win by almost 30 points, which that was very optimistic. I mean, after that first drive, Aldo.
What were you consuming on that show there, Aldo?
I just thought that the offense was going to explode. They were going to win 38-9. JJ McCarthy and it was headed that way after the first drive, right?
It was, to be fair. It was. I would have thought that too.
Instead of exploding, they imploded.
I was looking for the clip so I could put it on social media. Hey, look at me. I was right.
They're like, burn it.
Exactly.
So point being, we're all off to a poor start, some worse than others. But the question now is, how can the Bears avoid a poor start and somehow upset the Detroit Lions? Vegas has the Lions as 4.5 or 5.5 point favorites, depending on the sports book. But guys, we're going to end the show here with a discussion on what, outside of the obvious, it's going to take for the Bears to beat the Lions. So Danny, is there a key to this game? How can the Bears get a win over the Lions on Sunday?
Well, the one thing that I was talking about the Lions coming into the season in terms of how they're going to miss their coordinators, I think came to fruition in Green Bay last Sunday. Right? Offensively, they look putrid. Some of the design stuff that Ben Johnson had is not there right now. So I think the Lions are ripe for the taking. And if the Bears can get some of those starters back, namely Jalen Johnson and Edwards and even Inakala Gordon, I think to add to the guys that played on Sunday, I think they could hopefully generate some pressure and get to Jared Goff. But they're not going to confuse Jared Goff like they confused J.J. McCarthy for the first half. They're going to have to actually get to him and actually sack him. So I think that's where Dennis Allen, who, by the way, for the first three quarters, I was tweeting out, should be getting a game ball if the Bears win this game. Well, that all went down the tube in the fourth quarter. But, he's got to design some stuff where he gets some, pressure and just get into Jared Goff's face. Because even as a veteran, you get into his face, he'll throw the ball up there for grabs. So I think hopefully the Bears can come away with a pick or two. And then offensively, you got to establish the running game, and you got to get physical up front with the line of scrimmage, and you got to be able to, at least the threat of the run to give your quarterback the ability to do play action and to be able to freeze those second and third level linebackers. So that's where it all ends and starts with the Ben Johnson offense is establishing the run or even the threat of the run. And if you don't do that, if you continue to, have Caleb drop back and for 35 or 40 times, Detroit indoors, that gets loud. We saw some of those pre-snap penalties. Hopefully that doesn't continue moving forward, but, cut down on the penalties, get more physical at the line of scrimmage, offensively and defensively, and establish the running attack. And that's, I think, a way for you to go ahead and try and beat Detroit. I don't think Detroit's going to put up 50 points on you. That's my guess. So I think you have an opportunity here if you go in and play the game, the right physical demeanor on both offense and defense.
Right.
Let's hope that's not the case, and hopefully the Bears defense will be getting back Jalen Johnson and Kyler Gordon in the secondary, which should help there. Aldo, tell me how's Chicago going to beat Detroit on Sunday?
They're not. First of all,
fair. That's very fair.
I had predicted that they would, but based on what I have seen, I am having a hard time picking the Bears to win in Detroit. But in order to pull off a win, I want to see some better decisions made with the roster. Danny touched on this earlier. Ryan Poles still has the ability to make the decisions as to who is going to be on the game day roster. And I'd love to see Kevin Warren or someone in charge strip him of that, because I have a feeling that Ryan Poles had something to do with who was active yesterday, who wasn't active. And maybe Ben Johnson was hamstrung a little bit by what Danny described with the running back depths and putting Kyle. Now a lot of people are saying Kyle Monangai didn't see any more action after he missed a blitz pickup, and that may be true, but Brown should have been active. There's no doubt in my mind that Brown should have been active. First of all, he's good at special teams. And secondly, he might be the most physical back that we have on this roster. And I think in order to beat Detroit, you're going to have to pound them and run a power running game. So my concern, of course, when I say that I don't think the Bears are going to win, is that Poles is going to not allow Ben Johnson the full 100% autonomy to make the decision as to who is active. I realize, I hear what I'm saying. I'm being very, very pessimistic about this team. And maybe the Tyler Dunn article has made an influence on my subconscious mind. But I also have to say, I am just fed up with losing. We have to look at the facts. The facts are that Ryan Poles his contract should not have been extended with that one loss record that he had. That other things in this organization are just, I want to pull my hair out, but I'm losing it already. So screw that. So there's just things that have to change with this organization. And I'm hoping that we start to see those changes this season, not next season, not wait until next year.
Yeah, how bad is it that, it's already eliciting this reaction after week one? But yeah, it was very frustrating because, like you said, Aldo, we were like promised this change. And yeah, I know it's not going to be immediate, but it just felt like more of the same. And unfortunately, we have seen worse losses than we did on Monday night there. But no, I agree with both of you when looking ahead to Sunday's game against the Lions. They have to get the run game going, because the key here for the offense is you got to get Caleb Williams comfortable. He already looked antsy at home. Granted, it was on prime time. I get that. But now you're going to be at Ford Field. Those fans are going to be loud. It's the home opener. They're coming off a loss. It's going to be a rough environment, road environment for Caleb Williams. So I think the key is to get him in early rhythm. And that includes establishing the run game there too. So, and like Danny was talking about, getting pressure on Jared Goff, it's not going to, he's not JJ McCarthy. They're going to have to find a way to get after him. So that's going to be something that I'm watching as well. I don't think that they're going to pull it off. I think that Detroit will still have their struggles, with their new coordinators there. But I think that the Lions are just the more well-rounded team here. We all have new coordinators, but I think that the Lions are, they're going to get the win there at home. But I'm not ready to predict a score prediction yet, but we already know where you stand, Aldo. So Danny, going through your game, I believe you picked this as a win when we were doing our predictions last week. So does this stand as a win?
Yeah, I think they can go in there. Ben Johnson, true to his word, and this is another test, right? We're kind of getting to know Ben Johnson as these weeks go on, right? Eberflus would say stuff, and nothing would change. It would be the same crap week in, week out. Ben Johnson said that took accountability. We all praised him for that. He said that he made some calls. He wasn't he'd go back and change some of those plays. Let's see what he's been through a full game now with Caleb and the starters. He's seeing what they produce here on last night. what kind of changes he's going to make. What will he do, him and his staff, to put Caleb and the rest of the offense in a better position to put up consistent drives on the field and also put up some points. So I think if you score some points against Detroit, I think they're going to be struggling here early on to put points back on you, assuming that the defense plays for like the way they play the first 3 quarters, especially if you get back a couple of those starters. So I think the Bears do have a chance here to go in and eke out a victory. I'm not saying it's going to be a blowout, but I'm not like all those things be a 30-point a win there, but it's they can come out there with a 21-17 victory or 24-22, something like that. I think it's gonna be a close game, but you need a victory to get everyone back on, to kind of forget last night and move on past that. And I think a perfect place is to go in and beat Detroit. I said it, beginning of the season, I don't think they're as good as they were last year. I think they lost way too much in terms of some of that brain power on that staff, not only but the coordinators, but also 8 coaches overall have moved on. And so I think the Bears have a chance here if they go in and they play their game, but they got to establish the running game and they got to play physical. Detroit's game is physicality.
Danny is always the voice of reason in my ear.
Yes,
because I'm already at my pessimistic self, and I'm like, okay, Danny, so you're telling me there's a chance. I'm like, okay, so they can't get it done.
Yes. I feel like I need to call Danny more often or text with him more often so he can help me lower my blood pressure because it is sky high right now.
But it makes for great podcast, though.
We know week one's a liar, right? Now, I'm not saying the Bears are going to be Super Bowl contenders, but I'm saying week one's a liar. So at least about the Ravens. Ravens, they blow a 15-point lead. So what are they going to do? Put their heads in the sand and forget about the rest of the season? No, we're a young team developing here in terms of the offensively. The concerns I have, like you guys have all stressed, Caleb some of those throws. He cleans some of those throws up. Ben Johnson puts him in a little bit better position to kind of succeed there. And for me, it all starts up front, guys. Offense and defensive line. If those guys can play with physicality, establish the run game on offense, and impose their will on Jared Goff and the offense on defense, I think they can come out of here with a victory.
2 quick things, Alyssa, if you will allow me. Number one, kudos to EV Warrior. He's looked into the rule regarding the challenge play, and he says that once the player's knee is down, punching the ball, and only the ball, is no different than touching the player. It ends the play. And so EV Warrior.
That's what they said on TV as well. That's what the guy said on TV.
Okay. But I don't think he said it as well as EV is saying it here. No. I don't know. Maybe I misunderstood. And then the second thing I wanted to ask, and Alyssa, help me pressure Danny on this one. Because Danny, I don't know if it was last week's show or the show previously, you said, Danny, that you think Ben Johnson will not hesitate to make a quarterback change. Can you elucidate on that? Give us more reasoning. Don't you think, Alyssa, we need to get a little bit more from Danny on that, particularly since I've been so critical?
We have quarterback controversy discussion. It is week 2.
Exactly.
I didn't want to open up this can of worms this early, Aldo, but the only thing I will say is in my opinion, and this is my opinion, I think Ben Johnson, obviously, he took the job because of Caleb. One of the reasons he took the job was because of Caleb Williams. So I think he believes in Caleb Williams. I'm not saying at all he's given up a Caleb Williams or anything like that. But some of the stuff we saw last night was just not professional quarterback level playing. He made some terrific throws, but just the easy gimme plays. And that's where I think we all saw it on TV. Ben Johnson was furious. I mean, I think he did a good job of holding in some of the anger he had inside him, but that's not the way his plays were designed. And you go back and look at the all 22, and this is where I look at it today. Last night I didn't think Caleb had that bad of a game, but today when I look at it, the all 22, again, I want to point out, made some terrific throws, some terrific, went through progression, so on and so forth. But some of these easy layup throws that one to DJ down the sideline, those two we just point out, one to Komet and one to DJ on a 4th and 3. Those are easy NFL type throws that, for whatever reason, there was no pressure. The pocket was good. He just didn't make it. And I think if that continues, and I'm not talking about week 2 and week 3, I'm talking about like mid-season. Like say week 8, week 9. If Caleb still is not able to grasp this, I think what Ben would do is I think he would put him down a la Bryce Young last year, just kind of let everything settle down for him, because this kid's just been thrown into the spotlight from high school to college to the pros. and just let everything kind of calm down and just give him some more one-on-one time with either Case Keenum or JT Barrett, or even, with Ben Johnson himself. Let Tyson, start a couple games and have him watch from the sidelines. I think because you have to, Ben Johnson owes it to the rest of the team. You cannot lose this locker room and keep playing Caleb Johnson out there week in and week out if he just continually makes the same mistakes. Again, for everyone listening out there, I'm not saying Caleb's going to get benched or he deserves to get benched. I'm just saying if these things don't improve as the season goes on, I think Ben has the autonomy. We already know he has a great affinity or affection, I should say, for Tyson Bagent. So I think he would not hesitate to put Tyson in there for not only the team's sake, but also to give Caleb a little bit of a mental relaxation, to kind of let him sit back and watch. Again, just like Bryce Young did last year in Carolina, when he came back into the lineup, he was playing well. So I think that I don't want this to happen, but I can see it happening if things don't progress, moving forward in the season.
And
I think that's
Alyssa,
fair to say.
did you read the Tyler Dunn report, Alyssa?
I did. I read part 1.
Yeah. Okay.
Which was 54 pages.
I think that part 1 covered the fact that there were a lot of players and coaches who wanted to bench Caleb last season. And so if that is true, and a big underline on if that is true, don't you think that it would be a mistake, like Danny just said, if there is discontent among the players regarding Caleb's performance? Don't you think it would be a monumental mistake for Ben Johnson to not make a switch for at least a short term to get the best possible players out there to get a win?
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I agree with what Danny was talking about, because we're also talking in this hypothetical situation. It's not next week. It's not at the bye week even. We're at the midway point of the season. And if everyone's settling into the offense, and if Caleb still isn't making that progress, it's not like he's playing in a Shane Waldron offense like last season. So I think I could see that happening, and it might light a fire under his butt like it did for Bryce last year. So, I mean, I wouldn't rule it out. I'm not ready to give up on Caleb right now. I think it's one game. He's played 18 games, and we've given Justin Fields and Mitch Trubisky a lot more games before, deciding to move on, and, seeing some people overreacting, which I get it, because they did a lot for Caleb this offseason, with upgrading the offensive line, getting Ben Johnson, adding even more weapons for him. So I understand that expectations are heightened and they're kind of sped up in a way too, but this is one game. This is the first game that he's played an entire game in this offense. So we got to give him a little time. But if, like Danny was saying, and Alder, like you mentioned, if we get to a point at the middle of the season and it's something that players are asking for, and it's clear that Caleb isn't making progress and it's become a point of contention, then I think it's absolutely something that you should consider.
Indeed. That's a good final word to wrap things up, Alyssa. What do you think?
Absolutely. So that's going to do it for this week's Buffone 55. And Danny, do you got any new content coming this week on Shimon Draft Scout?
Yeah, with the start of NFL season, I've kind of taken a step back here, but we're getting back into it here this week. Hopefully, I'll have out my defensive tackles in college football, preview some of those guys that we'll be looking for here the upcoming draft in the interior of the defensive line. It's not a robust defensive tackle group so far early on, but we'll see how it plays out toward the end of the year. But look for that at Shimon Draft Scout. We'll kind of give you our top 10, our top 5, and 5 more to keep an eye on defensive tackles in college football.
Yeah, and I can tell people that video by Danny on Shimon Draft Scout will be out on Thursday. I promised him, because I'm helping with the edit on that. I promised him that it would be done Monday, but and then
Godfather.
So and then tomorrow here on the Barroom Network, it's going to be Bare Their Souls. We are starting the show now at 8:30 that will allow Daniken, our newest member of that show, and I to speak for 30 minutes. And I promise I'm going to keep my mouth shut and just ask him questions about what he feels. I think people have heard enough of my complaining about Caleb, so I'll try to limit that as much as possible. And then at 9:00, when the rest of the cast joins us, we will listen to Johnny Santucci's very entertaining Bears State of Affairs. Steven Zimmerman has a new musical. He's doing music to preview and analyze the previous game and preview the upcoming game, and it's very entertaining. I listened to the track today; it's very entertaining. So that'll be a lot of fun. That's all tomorrow. Bare Their Souls here on the Barroom Network at 8:30.
Excellent. And make sure you head to bearswire.com to check out all of our game preview for Sunday's game against the Lions. So that's going to do it for another episode of Buffone 55. For Danny Shimon, Aldo Gandia, and our fearless leader, John Buffone, I'm Alyssa Barbieri. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.